question about portfolio construction. Is there a right number of shares to have in a portfolio? And the answer to that is yes. Back in 1976, it was considered that the right number of stocks to have in a portfolio, and here we're looking at the question in terms of volatility and number of stocks. So how volatile is the portfolio based on how many stocks you have in the portfolio? And where this curve, you can see that if we add more stocks to a portfolio, the volatility goes down. So that's one measure of risk. It's not absolute risk. Real risk is losing all your money, right? This is risk measured as how volatile is the portfolio. And why does that matter? Well, if I could give you a portfolio that just kept going up in a 45-degree straight line and it never went down, you'd probably be happy with that, wouldn't you? Yeah, and if you're not, you're a socialist. So you're probably very happy with that. But of course, that's not the real world. So as we add more stocks, we can reduce the volatility. But here's the interesting thing. One of the inputs to obtain this curve in the algorithm, one of the inputs is the correlation between the stocks in the portfolio. So if you had a portfolio of 10 banks, right, there you're going to find that this curve, the point is going to be much higher because they're going to move together, aren't they? All the banks will move together. So that curve shifts up. But what's the right number? Well, in 1976, it was thought to be somewhere between 15 and 20 stocks. That's where the bulk of the benefit occurs. But what we've learnt recently, so more recent studies after Farmer and French, after 1976, have shown that stocks are now more volatile than they used to be. Stocks are more volatile than they used to be. So this whole curve now, it's still probably right that you need somewhere between 15 and 20 or 15 and 30 stocks, but that whole curve has shifted up just in the last couple of decades. And that's because the stock market is more volatile. Why is it more volatile? Because there's a whole bunch of people called baby boomers that are in what's called the panic accumulation phase of their retirement, pre-retirement, and they're panicking to have the right amount of money by the time they turn 65 because life's over after that. Forgetting that, of course, there's another 30 years of spending that needs to be funded. They're making all sorts of very, very strange decisions in a panic stage of their life just prior to retirement. And that's what's causing the increased volatility, in my view. Okay, in terms of reducing emotions, we have a process, and I suggest you have a process as well, and we divide the process up into two parts. There's the quantitative part, so the bit where it's all numbers and we don't have any human input at all. That's the first part of our process, and you can see the 37 ratios. They're the same 37 ratios that go into the quality scores for Skaffold. And then we have a valuation. We have a machine-generated valuation, Skaffold's valuation. Now, one of the questions that I'm going to get today is, why have you bought Certex? It's not cheap on Skaffold, and I'll explain that. But we have our valuations, our Skaffold valuations, and our own combination of valuations, which I'll talk about in Q&A. And then when that's done, we get a list of stocks. I showed you that list, one example of that list earlier. And then what we do is we go into our qualitative phase. So this is where we actually we qualitatively assess the quality of the business. This is where we talk to management, we talk to customers. I can remember for one gambling stock, one company that manufactures poker machines, we actually spoke to the CEO of a US competitor who happened to be driving through the Nevada desert on his way home from work, and when he was on the mobile and we were interviewing him. We go to some extreme lengths to find out what we can about the prospects of our businesses that we're thinking about owning. And then we also tweak the valuations based on what we discover. So if the company's competitor might say, there is absolutely no way that company is going to achieve the results that they're saying publicly, and here's why we think that, we'll assess that and we might put that into our model, and that might adjust the valuation as a result. Now, in terms of quality, only 24% of the entire Australian stock exchange, or 426 stocks, meet the A1 to B3 criteria. So it's a very small universe, but what's terrific about that is that without Skaffold, we wouldn't know what 24% to start looking at. Without Skaffold, we couldn't tell whether we should be over here or over here. And fortunately now, because of modern technology and the internet, we're able to whittle down this universe of 1,765 companies to just 426 that have any chance of making it into our portfolio. And this is my last slide, and this is the process mapped out. So essentially we're taking roughly 2,000 companies, we're credit modelling and performance modelling, and that's the same as what you're doing with Skaffold, the A1 to C5 test. The only other thing that we do is a liquidity test. Because we're big, we can't invest in lots of companies, so we've got a liquidity test in there, and you saw that in Skaffold. We're removing the micro caps and the nano caps, leaves us with about 300 companies because of that liquidity filter. Then we rank them quantitatively, so they're ranked from highest to lowest, from best opportunity to worst opportunity, and we've only got 11 staff at Montgomery, and there's 9 of them are investment analysts. They can't cover everything, so we're allocating our resources to the best opportunities. Then we go and qualitatively assess them. We re-rank them again. We take the top 100 and the ones that we think have the best chance then go to our investment committee for discussion. They then might make it into the portfolio, and then during Q&A we'll talk about portfolio construction.